I'm really looking forward to speaking with him. Former U.S. Ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, is here with us live. We've got eyes on potentially some developing court proceedings live tonight. It's a really busy Friday night. There's a lot to get to. I am really glad you are here. And I will be honest, I'm feeling a little fired up tonight. What's that phrase? I feel like I'm loaded for bear, right? So I'm just going to do this. I don't care. Let's just do it. Let's just start right in with something that Republicans really, really, really do not want to talk about. And part of the way you can tell they don't want to talk about it is because when they get asked about it, they turn pink, they stammer, they stomp their feet and put the microphone down. They do not want to talk about this at all. Republican Congressman Scott Fitzgerald of Wisconsin, for example, does not want to talk about this at all.
You personally believe that the newly elected Ukraine is a dictator and started the war against Russia?
No, I don't. No, like I said, I voted for the first tranche. No, Ukraine didn't start the war.
Why do we want
I'm not.
Have you expressed your opinion to Trump?
To Donald Trump, no.
Why?
No.
Because he stood there in front of everybody and said that. Use your voice.
I don't think that the president's goals are not what everybody wants, which is to end the war, right? End the war. So if you don't want to end the war, then you're in a different position. You've got to have some type of negotiated end to this. He's certainly pushing hard for that to happen. And if
Would you do that without him?
I can't speak over everybody. And if Zelensky needs to be in the room, he absolutely needs to be. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with the idea that he needs to be. He's probably part of the solution, right? So I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like, but I guess it's a good thing that the negotiations will continue, and hopefully we'll end up in a position where the entire conflict comes to a halt on a negotiated level. So, okay. Matthew,
There's a Matthew here somewhere. Matthew, please tell me you want to talk about like potholes or prostitution, pot legalization, anything about this Putin stuff. This stuff is making me very pink. I do not want to talk about this stuff. Let's talk about something else. Republican Congressman Rich McCormick in Georgia, same problem.
I would like to know your opinion and your stance on the current situation created by the president, wherein he is now saying that Ukraine is responsible for the war that Russia has initiated. And I would like to know if you as a congressman will get with your fellow congresspeople and stand up to the lies that are being told to the Americans. And I would also like to know if you believe that the 80-year-old alliance that we have with our European allies is strong enough to withstand the attack from our White House, because this is a dangerous, dangerous precedent. You as a serviceman should help us.
Zelensky, I think, is an honest broker of what he's trying to accomplish. He wants to save his nation. And I want Ukraine to win, and President Trump said he wants to, and I know you're gonna get, this is what he said. But it's in our best interest. It's in our best interest, in my opinion. And by the way, this splits the Republican Party down the middle. Half the Republicans support, half the... I have repeatedly spoken up on this. Repeatedly. I'm speaking about it right now, and I voted for Ukraine. And I have voted for Ukraine support every single time.
You guys, I will turn this town hall right around. I'm putting my microphone down. This keeps happening to Republican members of Congress in their Republican districts. and to Republican senators in their red states. Republican Congressman Mike Kennedy in Utah, Republican Congressman Kevin Hern in Oklahoma, Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski in Alaska.
Responsible for starting the war in Ukraine.
Thank you for asking this question.
Do you share his sentiment, and do you think funding should be cut for Ukraine?
I don't know that the president said that.
I knew he was going to say that. I knew he was going to say that. Oh my gosh.
So, as to who started the war, as far as I can tell, Vladimir Putin started the war.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Personally, do you support Ukraine or Russia?
Well, here's. No, it's not easy, ma'am. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Is Zelensky a dictator, yes or no?
That part I have a problem with that statement, yes.
Okay, did Ukraine start the war?
Well,
it's simple.
Do you support
Did Ukraine start the war, yes or no? Did Ukraine start the war?
I want to know where you stand
It's not part of
on
it.
Ukraine or Russia. We have been supporting Zelensky for years now. 3 years since Putin started this. Now we're isolating, or he is isolating America. He's calling names and all this. Where do you stand?
let me just say this. This is not the tactic that I would use to try to solve the problem.
I would like to express my dismay over the president's stance on Ukraine, including, as everyone knows, his outright falsehoods. And I'm curious, I imagine I know what your views are, but more significantly, what can the legislative branch do, and what do they have the stomach for to support a peaceful resolution that involves the leaders of Ukraine and not just Trump and Putin? That's my question.
Yeah, well, I think we were all more than a little bit stunned, really concerned about just this radical switch. I mean, it was literally last week. The president was speaking about how he was going to work to end the war in Ukraine. I think we would all like to see we would like to see a peaceful and positive outcome to the bloodshed after these years. And so to now hear President Trump's comments, very derisive comments about President Zelensky today, I felt were uncalled for and unfortunate. It is wrong to suggest that somehow or other Ukraine started this war, asked for this war, but I think we're all kind of scratching our heads at how quickly the conversation has gone from being one that is supportive of President Zelensky to now being more supportive of Putin.
This radical switch. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, in a town hall with her constituents last week, she says we're all scratching our heads at how quickly the conversation in the White House has now gone from being supportive of Zelensky to now being supportive of Putin instead. Scratching our heads. Republicans are having a hard time with this. They try to move on to the next question. They express annoyance with their own constituents for asking about it. They get brusque and short in their answers. Or, like Senator Lisa Murkowski, they just purport to be really perplexed, really confused, really scratching my head. They have a hard time with this. All the Republicans do, especially the guy at the top.
You just mentioned Putin, though, and this has been this controversy the past week. Can you say yes or no whether you have talked to Vladimir Putin since you stopped being president?
Well, I don't comment on that. If I have a relationship, I don't talk about.
You did talk
I don't
to
talk about. No, I don't talk about that.
You talk about talking to Netanyahu.
I don't talk about that. I don't ever say. Why don't you talk about it? I don't ever say about. Why not? What does that mean? I mean, that was right before the election. But it continued after the election. And people get so mad when I play this tape. People get very angry with me when I play this tape. But, you know, honestly, bring it on. It makes me appreciate it all the more because clearly, at least it strikes a nerve. Watch.
Have you talked to President Putin?
No, I have not.
You haven't talked to President Putin since you've been elected?
Well, I don't want to say that, but I haven't spoken to him recently.
So you've spoken to President Putin since you've been elected?
I don't want to say that. I don't want to say anything about that.
Are you going to be talking to Vladimir Putin?
Who?
Have you spoken to him?
I don't want to say.
So you've already spoken to Vladimir Putin?
I don't want to say that.
I don't want to say. I don't want to say. I can't say. Why can't you say? Why can't you say? What precludes you from saying? Listen, it's Friday night. Let's just do this. Let's just cut to the chase here. Let's do a little look-see at the landscape to see why exactly it is so hard for Republicans to deal with this topic. What exactly is so hard for Republicans to talk about? What exactly is it that we are doing, up to and including switching sides in a war? But it's not limited to that. It's all things that don't seem like good news for the United States. That makes them particularly hard to talk about. But nevertheless, with Donald Trump back in the White House, we keep doing these things relentlessly and urgently, and they all cut in the same direction. And it's really hard for Republicans to explain because of what it obviously means. It's clear why they do not want to talk about this stuff, and it gets all the more clear when you just line this stuff up. Let me show you what I mean. Here's one. Donald Trump's hand-picked attorney general. She gets sworn in to lead the U.S. Justice Department. On her first day on the job, what is the first thing she does? Headline: U.S. cuts task forces on foreign influence and Russian sanctions. Quote, in a memo sent to staff Wednesday, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi revealed she had disbanded the Foreign Influence Task Force, a unit dedicated to investigating violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Bondi did not elaborate, but figures on the Republican Party's conspiratorial far right have accused the government of abusing FARA to unfairly target political operatives like Paul Manafort, Trump's 2016 campaign chair, who was indicted in a probe into Russian influence in that year's U.S. election. Also on Wednesday, the day of her swearing in, Bondi disbanded Task Force Klepto Capture, an initiative started in 2022 to enforce sanctions against Russia. Who's all that good for? Shutting down the Foreign Influence Task Force, shutting down enforcement of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, and getting rid of the task force that enforces sanctions against Russia. Who are all those things good for? Why'd we do those things? And so urgently, her first day on the job. Here's another one, which happened that same day. Quote, in a little notice directive on her first day in office, Attorney General Pam Bondi ordered a halt to a years-old federal law enforcement effort to combat secret influence campaigns by China, Russia, and other adversaries that try to curry favor and sow chaos in American politics. Buried on the fourth page of one of 14 policy memos Bondi issued Wednesday, the order disbands the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force. Last year, Justice Department prosecutors and FBI agents exposed an alleged scheme in which Russia-backed media funneled $10 million to a conservative U.S. media company that hired prominent right-wing influencers. Here's how the New York Times bannered that one bluntly. Quote, Trump dismantles government fight against foreign influence operations. Dozens of employees who had been working to fight foreign interference in U.S. elections have been reassigned or forced out. That includes not only the FBI, but also CISA, the cybersecurity division at Homeland Security, which we soon learned the president's top campaign donor had installed a 19-year-old operative who reportedly personally operates websites in Russia and who has been associated with multiple criminal cyber hacking gangs. That's who the president's top campaign donor installed at CISA, giving him full access to systems and data at the U.S. government's cybersecurity agency. A 19-year-old kid with ties to Russia and cybercrime. Who's that good for? How do you explain to your constituents who that's good for and why we are doing that as a country? And what else? What else is hard to explain to ye olde constituents when it comes to that radical switch in the U.S. government that Lisa Murkowski described? How about this? Headline: CIA plans largest mass firing in nearly 50 years. Well, that's good for someone. Who's that good for? That came right after this. Oh, Trump's new hand-picked CIA director sent a list of CIA employees to the White House in an unclassified email. Quote, current officials confirmed that the CIA had sent the names of employees to the Office of Personnel Management, complying with an executive order signed by President Trump. Senator Mark Warner, top Democrat on the Intelligence Committee, wrote that the sharing of the officers' names was a, quote, disastrous national security development. One former agency officer called the reporting of the names in an unclassified email a, quote, counterintelligence disaster. Ah, yes, a disaster for the United States and for U.S. intelligence in particular. But very good news for someone. Hey, speaking of things that ought to be classified, headline: How Trump's security clearances order could make the U.S. vulnerable. The plan to give temporary security clearances without background checks opens the door to breaches and espionage, experts say. Giving out security clearances without background checks that look for things like, criminal entanglements, lots of debt, anything that they could blackmail you over, or any contacts with foreign governments. To make sure that you're not, secretly working for... We're not doing the background checks anymore. Trump just has ordered that the classified material be made available to whoever he says with no checks. That doesn't seem like good news for the United States. But again, it's good news for someone. How about when they decided that the first agency they would destroy would be USAID? Who cheered the loudest for that? Russia welcomes USAID cuts, calls agency machine for interfering. Yeah, it was fantastic news for someone. No one was seen to benefit more or to be more loudly cheering it on than Vladimir Putin. And that was before the specific news confirmed today that among the projects Trump is explicitly and specifically turning off right now, this week, is the program by which the U.S. helps Ukraine keep its electric grid up and running, even though Russia has repeatedly targeted that electric grid throughout the war. Because Russia's idea of how it wants to win the unprovoked war it declared on our ally is to make the civilian population, including kids and the elderly and hospital patients and everyone, their best idea for how to prosecute that war is to cause them to freeze to death by bombing the electric grid in February. So more than any other evident targeting, they have targeted the electric grid that serves the civilian population in Ukraine. It is the United States that has helped Ukraine masterfully keep the power grid up despite those repeated onslaughts by Russia. Until this week, when Trump just cut it off. Which is good news for someone, right? President dressed up the defense secretary he handpicked off the cast of the Fox and Friends weekend show, put him in a bright blue suit, and sent him to Europe, where he volunteered, unasked, that Ukraine can't be expected to keep all of its own territory. He said that would be, quote, unrealistic. It would be, quote, unrealistic to not let Russia take parts of Ukraine. He then volunteered, unasked, that Ukraine will not be allowed to join NATO. Now we've got pro-Trump Republican senators saying, yeah, not just Ukraine won't be allowed in NATO, we ought to get out of NATO too, which of course would collapse NATO. Who would that most benefit? For whom would that be really, really good news? Donald Trump says, let's let Russia back into the G7. Donald Trump is reportedly preparing right now for his own big in-person summit with Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump already started high-level meetings between the Russian and U.S. governments, including an inexplicable 3.5-hour meeting specifically between the president's real estate friend and Vladimir Putin himself. Steve Witkoff came back from that meeting and how'd that go? Went pretty well for someone. Headline, parroting Putin and Trump, Witkoff says Russia was provoked into invading Ukraine. Headline, Trump envoy can't name a single concession Russia will make in peace deal. What does it seem like is going on here? Imagine if a foreign adversary, imagine if the Putin government somehow could just do a thought experiment. Imagine they could somehow exert control or influence over the government of the United States. What do you think the Putin government would have the US government do if he could control it? What kind of headlines would you expect to see about the operations of our government under that kind of a scenario? And what would you expect the news out of the Oval Office and the White House to look like on a day like today? At the start of this made-for-TV debacle at the White House today, where the president and Vice President J.D. Vance screamed at our ally Vladimir Zelensky and berated him with Russian government talking points. When this happened today in Washington, there's a couple things that stuck out to me. First of all, at the very start of this photo op, they had all the press in the room, Trump was asked right at the outset when he last spoke with Vladimir Putin. He said, quote, a couple of days ago, which was news because the US government had said nothing about Donald Trump speaking with Vladimir Putin a couple of days ago. So that's new. He used to say, I'm not allowed to talk about that. Now he's admitting that he talks to Putin all the time, even when the US government doesn't release any information about those calls like they do with all other foreign leaders. Second, was the truly bizarre revelation that Russian state-controlled media, for some reason, was in the Oval Office today when this scene happened with Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, to be clear, the Trump White House will not allow the Associated Press or Reuters into the Oval Office to cover White House events anymore, but somehow TASS media, Kremlin-controlled Russian state media, somehow made their way into the Oval Office for this berating of the Ukrainian president today, and Russian state media was in the Oval Office somehow live streaming from the event. Afterwards, look at this bizarre statement from the White House attributed to an unnamed White House official. Quote, TASS was not on the approved list of media for today's pool. As soon as it came to the attention of press office staff that he was in the Oval, he was escorted out by the press secretary. He is not on the approved list for the press conference. It's not on the approved list. I have no idea how he got in there. To live stream for Kremlin-controlled state media the president and vice president of the United States screaming at Ukraine's president and berating him with Russian talking points.
Duck Walk by Ariel Williams. Henrietta Wilkins rushes to church one Sunday morning, accidentally leaving her gate open. Her duck, Duckweisha, seizes the chance to take her 5 ducklings to the local pond. Along the way, the ducklings fall into a manhole, causing a town-wide rescue effort. After a frantic search, Duckweisha finds her ducklings safely swimming in the pond, and the heartwarming story makes local news. Meanwhile, Henrietta realizes her mistake and panics, but the firemen reunite her with Duckweisha and her ducklings, bringing a happy ending to their adventure.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
The Terms and Conditions of a King, A New Beginning. Ariel, with her young daughter Jasmine, walked into the optical lens store one day to find King being verbally attacked by his coworkers. Witnessing this harsh treatment, Ariel immediately felt a deep sense of sympathy and concern for King. She stepped in, offering support, which forged a strong bond of friendship between them. Over time, as their friendship blossomed, they began to share their personal lives and struggles. Eventually, they both discovered something astonishing. They had been connected for much longer than either realized. They had been meeting in a shared dreamscape, where they had formed a deep, unspoken connection. Ariel had been there to comfort King in a difficult time, offering him advice, unaware that their paths would eventually cross in the waking world. This revelation deepened their bond, and they began to explore not only their growing friendship but also the strange, mystical connection they shared through their dreams.
Get your digital copy today at lulubooks.com and experience the adventure in EPUB or PDF format. Make sure you have a compatible reader to dive into this unforgettable journey. Don't miss out, unlock the secrets, and let the story begin.
In a quaint village, Jamie, a young baker living in a mushroom-shaped house, is beloved for his delicious, mushroom-shaped cakes. Lucas, a skilled handyman known for helping the townspeople, frequently visits Jamie for treats and to lend a hand. When Jamie's baking supplies are delayed due to a supplier going out of business, he becomes distraught. Lucas comforts him, and in that moment, they realize their growing feelings for each other. As Lucas helps Jamie find a new supplier and supports him through his struggles, their bond deepens into love. Soon, the village comes to see them as a perfect pair, celebrating their sweet connection. To get your copy of The Baker and the Handyman's Sweet Connection, please visit lulubooks.com. This is an electronic book, so be sure to have an EPUB or PDF reader to enjoy this heartwarming story by Ariel Williams.
To view more ebooks, click Linktree in bio.